And then if they don't have it, then we have to take it to the streets. We have to take it to the streets. We say we need a reparations task force with a community reparations fund to provide alternative to the kinds of deprivation and problems and issues and stuff that we are facing, that our children are facing, that our families are facing. And if the powers that be say that they won't participate, they aren't going to do it, then we have to turn them out. We have to turn them out. And I just when Reverend Manny was talking about strategies, okay? There's one strategy that we can use to try to help our children and deal with some of these issues and provide this music, for example, music training, etc., by demanding reparations funds from those who supply the criminal justice system. From the corporations that benefit from the criminal justice system. The fact that Louisiana is the most incarcerated, people are more incarcerated in Louisiana than any state in the Union or anywhere in the country. Some corporations are making money off of that, and all of those corporations have contracts. Those type of corporations have contracts, and where do they get the contracts from? Who gives them these contracts? The politicians.
City government.
The politicians give them those contracts, and so if the politicians are unwilling to revoke a contract from a supplier of the criminal justice system in New Orleans or in Louisiana, the state, then that politician needs to be turned down.
There's lots of money, private and public money, because they recognize that we have a lot of mental health issues, and they're throwing money at organizations around mental health. So that is the food for thought.
All right.
Well, Mama, what we got is trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma and on top of trauma. We don't get a break. And you know now, you got your brown babies up from the south trying to fix this shit again, jumping up on roofs, trying to replace us, running crews, risking their lives again, Mama. And you got the descendants of stolen people who were enslaved, who ain't had no money to build since we were promised 40 acres and a mule. And another promise that Uncle Sam ain't had no goddamn intentions on keeping anyway.
Today, that is what we need, truth-telling about the hurts and the harms that have been done. And then once that truth-telling has come, we accumulate the data and do the research, and then we go about seeking those reparations because of that harm that was done.
10 toes, sometimes I have 4, 5, 3, but I'm just saying to speak from their experience, because that is how we come up with the solutions that we collectively need. If we continue to only look to folks who hold these certain roles or positions in society, we will never come up with the solution. Amen.
Thank you guys.
Production. And by the way, I'm a cultural custodian. I host the Wednesday edition of Jazz from the Finch Market on WWOZ.
Yeah.
And so it impresses. I'm impressed by how important it is for creative people to define and control their processes and the outcomes of their product.
More important than anything else is the engagement of the people, the education of the people, the process by which we reach out and touch folk to around these issues and get them behind it. Because at the end of the day, none of these forces will necessarily come clean simply because they want to come clean. It's because we compel them to come clean. some of it will be on marching on ballot boxes, some of it's because we hold in our hands significant economic power. That if we withdraw that economic power, they will come begging to talk about what is the reparations settlement that you want to achieve. So we hold power. We just have to realize that we hold the power. Connecting with our ancestors and understand that our ancestors are crying out for us to do this. Even with our harm, even with us. And so we have to embrace each other, the familyness that you talked about, that becomes important. As battered, scarred, and all that. But beyond that, it's like our poetess said, Maya Angelou, strong women and men keep coming.
And so it was that data that 71% of our arrests were in the Black community. We're 16% of the population in Evanston. And so I'm sure that it's very similar here in your community. And that information was readily available. It's just information that we make policy with, we program with that information. And I'm sure you can find an academic partner or other partners that can help you get even deeper data that you might need to help, because you will need it as you grow into the work. But I'll say that it was the data that informed my argument for reparations in Evanston.
There's not just some laws in especially in Louisiana, all of them. All these laws were written 300 years ago, and now one of them was for our benefit. So let's start over, right? Like, to me, that would be the most compelling form of reparations, is to rebuild these laws. We need to have an equity assessment of every law that we have, and we can start very easily with that in New Orleans, and we have actually started some of that work with the health department, right? Any law that is anti-Black has to go, period. And that could be the start of reparations for culture bearers and for all of us.
Say pretty easy fixes, which are for crime victims, are life insurance automatically across the board for all Blacks in the city. Sick time for when people have a victim issue or whatever. And the third is burial for victims. Those should be easily picked up by the city or whatever.
Thank you. And then
So many barriers in place to get accessible opportunities for housing. Say, for instance, you need to be on the street a year and need to be documented for a referral program, and you need to have a case manager catching you out in the street downtown in French Quarter. That's problematic. Or let's say there's incentivized programs for people with HIV or for things like that. Literally, this is how our folks work, but people are on the streets. So when we diminish those just type of excess administrative barriers of bias, then we can do much more in supplementing the work that we need to do to eradicate housing.
I heard Black women say that they have bought their house in their nice neighborhood, and that they don't want the poor Black people to follow them into their neighborhood. And I wish to God I was exaggerating. This was Monday. Was it 25 years ago? Was it 15 years ago? It was 5 days ago. That Black women from all over this city, Black men from over this city, stood up and then white people followed them and said what they said. What they said. Because we don't have to say it, because Black people just said it. And housing is the only arena we accept that nonsense. I want you all to think really deep and hard about how you feel about the idea of affordable housing. How you felt driving here if you passed the people under the bridge and you just despaired how little we understand the housing system in this country. So you drove past the people under the bridge. You may have come from a different direction. I promise you saw a homeless person today if you drove here. How many units do you think we need to build right now? You can snap your fingers. How many units do we need right now to help all those people under the bridge? Everybody who's doubled up, everybody who's paying more than they can afford. How many? I'm interactive. I want somebody to shout out what the number is. How many do you think we need to build right now?
The same they tore down after Hurricane Katrina.
Give me a number. Give me a number. 60,000. The number actually 50,000, 30,000. The number is 0.
Also, we talking about organizations here. We also have to entertain the fact that we have organizations that have been in place that have harmed us.
Yeah.
So we got to be careful about how we talk about what organizations that we gonna sit at the table to be involved in this organizing. We have to be fair and it has to be just.
I think everybody here really understands New Orleans is unique. And we talk about it in terms of the music, the dance, the food, and all that. But rarely, and mostly because we're not taught it, it's not in the curriculum, it's not in school. And that's part of the issue as well.
This is one of the most unique cities in the world, on the planet. That's why New Orleans is rated one of the top 5 destination cities in the country, because of that uniqueness that we bring. That's fact number one.
Over-policing. We haven't spent much time talking about Louisiana's notorious distinction as being the incarceration capital of the world. I mentioned earlier that we are 1/3 of the population, but we are 2/3 of the prison population. So I just wanted to, from a data perspective, I think that also kind of highlights, and it just needs to be mentioned. You talk about enslavement, and it's very clear what our prison system is an outgrowth of. And I think Ava DuVernay did a brilliant job in her documentary 13, showing the connection between slavery and convict leasing and what that grew into today in terms of our Louisiana prison system, and the fact that African Americans make up 2/3 of our jail population. Serious issue. And I just wanted to mention that statistic.
So reparations for the victims community is needed. They are looking for the check. And up until 2 years ago, they were denied reparations if you had a criminal record. You could have served time in prison. You've been punished times over. You served your time in prison. You did your probation and parole, and you still were denied the reparations. Or you were raped, and because you wore the wrong thing, you still were denied reparations. Those meetings that happen in Baton Rouge is usually the second Tuesday of the month. If you've never been, I encourage you to witness how folks make the decision of what they feel like you deserve. And for our Black and brown communities, it's not much.
One legal issue that we have to face in this country, everywhere, and that's this whole notion of reparations being race-based or not, right? Because if it's race-based, it's unconstitutional, that they're saying, right? And so we're pushing the whole notion that it's not race-based, but harm-based, right? It's based on what happened to a group of people during the so-called transatlantic slave trade. No other people, even though there's other African people, there's other Black people on the planet, but only a people who experienced that particular ordeal are the subjects for the claim that we're making.
A lot of people in this room are involved in cultural equity work, and we had some folks speak about that earlier. We need equal access to public space in the city for Black or cultural organizations, so that they can have as much access to public space as the St. Patrick's Day Parade.
Come on.
Thank you.
A strategy. So this is a dialogue, and we need to be inclusive of y'all to get you to help us develop this strategy as to where we come from here. Because this can't be just another hear and listen and absorb. We gotta get moving on this. All right.